Will here from the St. Johns County Public Library System, and it's time for another edition of Homeschool History. So let's jump right into it, all right? And this month we're talking about Florida and the Civil War. I know some other states from both sides, from the Union and the Confederacy, get a little bit more notoriety for their role in the Civil War. And Florida was important, it just was important in a different way. So going to war. In 1861, South Carolina is the first state to officially secede from the Union. And this really sets off what would become the 4-year war between the North and the South. It is followed by Mississippi and Florida. So Florida is the third state to secede from the Union. However, Florida is also the least populated Confederate state. So because Florida is the least populated Confederate state, there's only around 140,000 people living in the state once the Civil War starts. Of that 140,000, half of them were slaves. So Florida's role in the Civil War, because of the low population, looked very different. Florida only contributed about 15,000 men to the war. So the main role was supply, and they supplied beef, pork, fish, fruit. Beef was a big industry in Florida. It still is, but it was really big at this time. So the Confederacy really wanted to use Florida as their breadbasket to make sure they could feed their soldiers, especially because fighting happened in a lot of the other southern states. Crops and fields were damaged. So the Confederacy heavily relied on Florida to feed its troops. So coastal Florida and the interior of the state had very different experiences under the war as well. The Confederacy very quickly abandoned the coast and chose to protect the interior of the state. There's a very important reason for this. Crops don't grow on the coast. The interior part of the state is where all the agriculture happens. That's where the best soil is. And again, they wanted to make sure Florida fields stayed productive to feed the Confederate soldiers. So most battles in the state of Florida were really just skirmishes. The Union did not invest a lot of troops to go into the interior of Florida, but the Union did hold the coastal towns. They held St. Augustine, they ran Key West. So the Union controlled the coast of Florida, and by controlling the coast, they really hurt the Confederate chances to ship by water supplies elsewhere. So Florida and the Confederacy were relegated to only using land routes to get the supplies to different parts of the Confederacy. Tallahassee was also the only capital east of the Mississippi not captured. The Union tried, but they didn't put a lot of effort into it. Tallahassee wasn't considered as big of a prize as some of the other Confederate capitals. And so this continued for the majority of the war. I mean, we had soldiers from Florida units who fought in Gettysburg and some of the big battles that we associate with the Civil War. The biggest battle that happened in Florida is Ulusty. There's a battlefield there. There's a reenactment. But there was never really the same types of battles that there were in other southern states during this war. And I know that probably sounds underwhelming. There's not a lot of big battles, and battles are showy. But there's a lot that goes into a war, a lot of important things that happen that have nothing to do with the battles themselves. So the Confederacy understood that if they lost places like the interior of Florida, they would be really, really hurting for supplies. And that was one of the things that the Union attacked most consistently, which is why they blockaded the entire South, to prevent them from getting or receiving or sending supplies elsewhere within the Confederacy easily. So these supply routes were extremely important to the Civil War, and it's ultimately what one of the reasons why the Confederacy lost. They could not control their own supply lines effectively. So that was a very quick history of the Civil War in Florida. So let's move on to the activity. We're going to make a tin can lantern. I would recommend having an adult with you. You do need hammer and nails. I would also recommend, if you have them, to use the battery-operated tea lights. But if you have the candles, that'll work as well. Just make sure you have an adult light them for you. So I'm gonna leave this up for a minute, and then we're going to jump over to actually make our lantern. Alrighty, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna make our lantern. And all you need is a tin can or aluminum can. They're not made of tin anymore. And you wanna take the label off. And some of the glue on these cans are pretty sticky. So if you had any glue, have an adult help you take the glue off. You're probably going to need some sort of adhesive removers. So make sure to ask your adult if you got any to help take that glue off. If you can't get it off, that's okay. It's not going to affect what your lantern looks like. You're going to need a Sharpie if you want to map out where your little dots are going to be. And then you're going to need, and this is where you might want to have your adult help you as well, a hammer and some nails. Now, if you use nails of different sizes, it's going to make your holes different sizes and give you a little bit different look. I only have nails of the same size, and I brought an extra one just in case my first one breaks or something. I would recommend doing this. If you can do this outside, great. If you can't, make sure you do it at a place where your adult's okay doing it. You know, markers can be permanent. You don't really want to hammer on something that you're going to damage if possible. So if you have to do it on a table inside, make sure to have something down in between the table and what you're doing. So the first thing I did is I put a dot here, and if you turn your can around, I put a dot here. And that's to tell me where my handle's gonna go. So we're gonna save those dots for last, but I wanted to mark them off so I know for sure that's where my handle's gonna be. And now you're just going to take your marker and dot along your can. It can be any design you want it to be, any pattern, and this is gonna show you where your light is gonna come through when we put the candle in it, okay? So let's get started. You can see my cat Chewy is very interested. All right, you can see I have put little dots just randomly all over my can. So the next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna take a nail and you're gonna start hammering holes through your can. This, you want to be very careful doing this. You don't want to like smash your fingers or whatnot. So make sure you have an adult with you to help. And I'm going to start doing mine right now. All right, so I got one nail in. Pull him out. Now, if you're having problems with your can bending or flattening, you can freeze water in this and then do this part outside, and once it's still frozen, hammer your nails in that way. So we're just going to continue until all the holes are open. All right, so you should have something similar to this. You want to make sure that you put in quite a few holes. If you don't put in enough holes, you're not going to really see a lot of light, and this is supposed to be like a lantern. It's not going to be like a flashlight, so it's only going to give off dim light. And now we're going to work on our handle. So you can use something sturdier like a wire hanger if you have it. I do not have one, so I'm going to try to use this twine to give it something for me to hold on to. So let me just measure this out here. Now you have your handle. If you plan on using real candles, make sure your handle is long enough to where you're not burning the tops of your fingers or it's too hot for your hand if you decide to hold it. I am going to use battery operated tea lights. They're easier for me and you don't have to worry about any fire. So I tried this with one was too dim. I would recommend using at least two unless you have found some super duty battery powered tea lights that I don't know exist. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn these on. So we turned this over just a little bit, turned off as much light as we could. You can see the light coming through. If you get into a dark room, like if you have a bathroom with no windows, these three lights actually work pretty well in here. And I hope you all enjoyed this homeschool history. I look forward to seeing you all again next month. If you have any suggestions, please comment below. contact the library, the message will get to me. Give us a like, and we will see you all next time. Bye.